Did you notice how everything in episode 7 of Blood of My Blood was leading us toward one of the most dangerous and emotional turning points of the series? The entire episode felt like a carefully constructed trap, slowly tightening around Ellen, Julia, and Henry, while Brian's choices are putting everyone on the edge of destruction. And then the trailer for episode 8 drops, and suddenly all of those theories we've been building about Ellen's fate, about Julia and Henry's reunion, about whether the Grants will finally strike, come crashing into focus. Episode 7 gave us revelations, betrayals, and heartbreaking setups, but Episode 8 looks like it's going to take everything even further. This isn't just another chapter. It's the one where honor, love, and survival collide in ways that could shatter every relationship we've come to care about. Let's break it all down and then dive deep into what the trailer is hinting at, because believe me, things are about to get brutal. Episode 7 was heavy, layered, and honestly one of the most frustrating episodes so far, but in the best way possible. We finally got clarity about Ellen's real intentions, Julia's impossible situation with Simon, and Henry's precarious survival in the past. Let's start with Ellen because she is the centerpiece of everything that's going wrong right now. At first, her decision to attend the Jacobite meeting seemed like a reckless move. Why would she put herself in such a dangerous spotlight when she knows how fragile her position is within her family and with the Grants? But then it hit me. The entire point of her being there wasn't just to play politics. Ellen wanted to send a signal. If the Grants knew she was spotted at a Jacobite gathering, they might hesitate to move forward with the marriage, maybe even try to back out of it completely. It's a desperate attempt to sabotage her own betrothal from within, and while it shows her courage, it also reveals her naivety. Because Ellen underestimated Malcolm and his obsession with purity, and she failed to realize that her attendance at a political meeting wouldn't matter as much to him as whether or not she could be proven untouched. And now, that single miscalculation has led her directly into the nightmare of a public virginity test. But Ellen isn't the only one whose decisions carried weight in episode 7. Julia's storyline with Simon has been excruciating to watch, and yet it finally gave us a payoff that hints at something bigger. The forged birth and marriage records were such a clever twist. It's classic Outlander-style deception. Simon bribed the minister to fake the dates, making it seem like Julia and Henry's child was born after their official marriage, but then, in the most chilling move, had the minister killed to bury the evidence forever. That single act not only trapped Julia, but also secured Simon's grip on the child. And here's the real kicker, the name reveal, William Henry Beach. Out of all the possible names, they chose William. At first glance, it feels like a random choice, but fans know better. Names carry weight in this universe. And now, the theories are exploding. Could this William be the link between Claire's mysterious brother and Fanny and Jane? Or could he somehow connect back to Brian and Ellen's own lost child, William Simon, who died so young? Episode 7 was deliberately teasing us with these parallels, and the uncertainty is driving me insane in the best way. The one bright spot in an otherwise tense episode was the moment of levity with Julia, Dana, and Mistress Porter. The monk's pepper scene was genius. It gave us a much-needed break from the suffocating dread of Simon's advances and reminded us that these characters can find strength in one another. I loved seeing them bond, strategize, and laugh even for a second. It felt like a callback to the warm group dynamics that made Outlander so compelling. But let's be real. The happiness didn't last long, because the shadow of Henry loomed over everything, and Episode 7 finally confirmed what we suspected. Julia realizes Henry is alive, working in the past with the Grants. That moment wasn't just emotional, it was game-changing. The fact that Henry is so close, yet so unreachable, sets up their reunion to be either one of the most beautiful or one of the most devastating moments in the show, and if the trailer is anything to go by, the writers are going to make us suffer before we get the payoff. Now here's the big theme of Episode 7. Sacrifice. Every storyline, from Ellen's reckless defiance to Julia's impossible choices, was about what these characters are willing to give up. Ellen risks her future to avoid a forced marriage. Julia risks her sanity to protect her child. Henry risks his identity just by being in the past. And Brian, caught in the middle, risks his family's legacy by choosing love over duty. The episode showed us that no one escapes unscathed in this world. Everything has a price, and in episode 7, we watched those prices start to come due. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get any more tense, the trailer for episode 8 hit, and everything escalated. The most terrifying thread running out of episode 7 and straight into the episode 8 trailer is Ellen's so-called testing. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that this is even happening, but the show is pulling no punches here. What we're seeing is not just a test of Ellen's virtue, it's a public humiliation designed to strip her of agency and remind everyone who holds the power. The Grants and the Mackenzies are using Ellen's body as a bargaining chip, and the very idea that this could be carried out in front of witnesses makes my blood boil. Episode 7 set the stage for it perfectly. Ellen tried to outmaneuver them by attending the Jacobite meeting, thinking she could manipulate the politics, but the men in power turned everything back onto her, reducing her to this degrading spectacle. The trailer makes it crystal clear. This won't be a private affair whispered about behind closed doors. It will be a public trial of her honor, and the stakes could not be higher. Because as Brian himself warns, if they discover she's not pure, it won't just be Ellen who pays the price. They will kill her and the man she's been with. That's the sword hanging over both their heads, and the tension is unbearable. And that brings us directly to Brian's role in all of this. Episode 7 made it painfully obvious that Brian's patience has run out. He has watched Ellen get backed into a corner over and over, and he knows there's no peaceful escape from this situation. For too long, he's trusted in the possibility that alliances could shift, that maybe the Mackenzies or the Grants would show some leniency. But the announcement of this public testing shattered any illusions of safety. In the trailer, we see Brian confronting the reality head-on. He cannot sit by while Ellen is paraded in front of the clan like a sacrificial lamb. And here's where his dilemma comes into focus. Does he risk everything? His honor, his standing, his family's wrath, and possibly his life by rescuing Ellen? Or does he stand aside and let the ritual play out, hoping against all odds that Ellen will somehow escape judgment? For Brian, there is no middle ground anymore. Episode 7 was the slow erosion of his patience, but Episode 8 looks like the breaking point where he will have to act. What makes this storyline so heartbreaking is the way Ellen herself faces it. In Episode 7, we saw her stubborn bravery, her willingness to play a dangerous game by attending the Jacobite gathering, but now she's caught in a no-win situation. She can either stay silent and endure the test, risking exposure and death, or she can confess the truth and guarantee Brian's execution. It's the ultimate lose-lose, and that's what makes it so gut-wrenching to watch unfold. Even in the trailer, there's this moment where Ellen seems to steel herself, as if she's prepared to die rather than give Brian's name. That's love, but it's also tragedy, because we know the men surrounding her won't hesitate to spill blood if it maintains their sense of honor. Ellen's entire storyline right now is about resilience in the face of humiliation, and I think Episode 8 will push her further than we've ever seen before. What fascinates me most, though, is how the trailer positions Brian alongside Julia. The two of them, both trapped in impossible circumstances, seem to be finding common ground in their shared desperation. Julia needs Brian's help to reach Henry, and Brian needs Julia's help to save Ellen. Their alliance is more than just convenience, it's survival. In Episode 7, their bond was hinted at, but Episode 8 promises to solidify it. The way the trailer shows them on horseback together suggests they're ready to defy everyone and everything to protect the ones they love. And honestly, this alliance is the most exciting development right now because it creates a new axis of power. Julia and Brian against the entire structure of family, clan, and tradition that is trying to crush them. But here's the catch. Alliances don't guarantee survival in this world. The show has made it clear that even the strongest love stories can be shattered by politics and cruelty. So while we're hoping Brian will swoop in at the last moment and save Ellen from the test, the realist in me says it won't be that simple. Maybe Ellen will be dragged into the ceremony anyway. Maybe Brian's rescue attempt will come too late. Or maybe, in true Outlander fashion, the test will be interrupted in some shocking, brutal way we didn't see coming. The suspense lies in not knowing which path the writers will take, and that's what makes this storyline so gripping. Episode 7 already planted the seed of doom, and the trailer for Episode 8 watered it with dread. Ellen's fate is hanging by a thread, and Brian's dilemma has transformed from a slow-burning tension into a ticking time bomb. Everything is converging on this one horrific ceremony, and we're left asking the question, will love be enough to overcome the merciless traditions of honor and shame? Or will Ellen and Brian's story end in blood before it ever truly begins? If Ellen's storyline is the most horrifying in terms of public humiliation, then Julia and Henry's storyline is the most heartbreaking in terms of emotional devastation. Episode 7 finally gave us confirmation that Julia knows Henry is alive, and that single revelation shifted everything. Up until now, Julia's arc has been defined by her despair, her entrapment with Simon, and her constant fear of losing her child. But the moment she realizes Henry is not only alive, but also close by, working in the past under the Grants, the tone of her journey changes from survival to reunion. That tiny sliver of hope, that flicker of possibility, suddenly breathes new life into her, and you could feel it radiating through the episode. Yet hope in Blood of My Blood is always dangerous. It comes with strings attached, and the cruel part is that the show never lets us have it without suffering first. Henry's situation, meanwhile, is just as fragile. Episode 7 didn't focus on him as much as Julia or Ellen, but his shadow was everywhere. The Grants have him under their control, and his very existence in the past is a ticking clock. If anyone realizes who he really is, or what his connection to Julia might be, he's finished. That's why the trailer for Episode 8 is so maddening and exciting at the same time. We see Henry and Julia in that abandoned church, the same haunting place where Ellen and Brian shared their stolen moments. At first glance, it looks like the long-awaited reunion we've been craving. Julia and Henry, face to face again after everything. But here's the twist. Henry doesn't believe what he's seeing. He thinks Julia is a vision, a hallucination, some trick of his weary mind. And that's where the writers are playing with our emotions in the cruelest way possible. Imagine Julia's heartbreak. She finally finds her husband, finally touches him, only for him to dismiss her as not real. That's not the joyous reunion fans have been begging for. It's a knife twist, and it sets up a devastating cliffhanger. Episode 7 prepared us for this perfectly. It reminded us over and over how fragile Julia's situation is, how dangerous Simon's grip has become, and how Henry is trapped in a life he doesn't belong to. The setup is almost poetic. Two people tethered to each other by love but constantly pulled apart by circumstance. And Episode 8 is dangling that reunion in front of us like a cruel prize. We know they will see each other, but the conditions of that meeting might break them before it heals them. I don't think it's an accident that the trailer shows Henry questioning his own sanity in that moment. It's symbolic of how fractured he has become, how much the past has worn him down. For Julia, it's not just about proving she's real. It's about proving that their love can still survive after everything Simon has done to her, after all the lies and manipulations. What's so brilliant about this setup is how it ties Julia and Brian's alliance directly to Henry's storyline. In the trailer, we see Julia on horseback with Brian, and it's clear they're heading towards something monumental. Maybe it's to reach Henry, maybe it's to rescue Ellen, or maybe both. But what matters is that Julia is no longer passive. Episode 7 showed us a Julia who was suffocating, powerless, and cornered. Episode 8 looks like it will show us a Julia who is reclaiming her agency, even if the path forward is littered with heartbreak. Her determination to find Henry, to hold on to him no matter the cost, mirrors Brian's determination to save Ellen. And that parallel makes their alliance even more powerful. They are two lovers fighting against the tide of family, clan, and politics, and the writers are clearly setting up their stories to collide in ways that will reshape everything. But here's the suspenseful part. What happens after the reunion? Because let's say Julia does manage to convince Henry she's real, that this isn't a hallucination. What then? They're still surrounded by enemies. Simon still has a claim on her child. The Grants still control Henry's fate. Ellen is still under the threat of testing, and Brian is still walking straight into danger. The reunion is just the beginning of another storm. Episode 7 showed us the stakes. Episode 8 promises to rip the bandage off and force Julia and Henry to confront whether their love can survive not just time, but the cruelty of the men who control their lives. That's what makes this so excruciating. We've been begging for their reunion for episodes, but deep down we know it won't be simple. It won't be happy. It won't even be safe. It will be bittersweet at best, devastating at worst, and either way, it will be unforgettable. Episode 7 lit the fuse, and Episode 8 is going to show us the explosion. The only question is, will Julia and Henry finally find each other for real, or will fate rip them apart all over again? Now, let's dive into one of the most shocking and layered reveals of Episode 7, the baby's name. For weeks, the show teased us with playful conversations between Julia and Henry about names, planting the idea that if they had a boy, he might be called Peter. It felt casual, lighthearted, almost like a false promise tucked into their otherwise heavy storyline. But then the reveal hit, and instead of Peter, the baby was named William Henry Bache. That choice wasn't random. Nothing in this universe is random, especially when it comes to names that echo across time and generations. And the more you think about it, the more you realize this single decision opens the door to some of the most mind-bending theories we've had so far. First, let's consider the most straightforward theory, that William Henry Bache grows up in the past and eventually becomes connected to Jane and Fanny. Maybe he's their parent, maybe their grandparent, but either way, this would tie Claire's mysterious brother directly to them. It would explain why the show has been weaving Jane and Fanny into these stories so deliberately, and it would give the name William an almost prophetic weight. This theory fits perfectly with the way Outlander loves to loop bloodlines back on themselves, showing us how time travel doesn't just move individuals through history, but reshapes entire family trees. If this is true, then Julia's baby isn't just a child caught in a tragic love story. He's the key to a whole branch of the family's destiny. But then there's the second, darker theory, and honestly, it sends chills down my spine. What if William Henry Bache is tied not to Jane and Fanny, but to Brian and Ellen's own family? Longtime fans remember that Brian and Ellen had a son named William Simon, who tragically died of smallpox as a child. Episode 7 deliberately echoed that history, almost as if it wanted us to make the connection. Could it be that Julia's child is taken from her and somehow raised by Brian and Ellen, filling the void left by their lost William? It sounds wild, even impossible, but remember, this is a world where timelines bend, where children can be hidden, and where names repeat like echoes through the centuries. The showrunner has been planting seeds, and this might be one of them. The unsettling part, though, is that Simon Fraser has already stamped his claim on the child by naming him officially. Would he ever willingly let that child go? Absolutely not. Which means, if this theory is even partly true, something catastrophic would have to happen to rip the baby from Simon's control. And if you think about it, Episode 8 might just start setting those events into motion. But let's not forget another crucial angle. This name might not tie directly to either Jane and Fanny or Brian and Ellen's lost son. Instead, it could be a symbolic bridge, a name that links Julia and Henry's child to the greater Fraser legacy in ways we don't fully understand yet. In Outlander, names are more than labels. They're prophecies, hints, foreshadowing. Claire, Jamie, Faith, Brianna, all of them carried names that resonated with meaning, often only revealed much later. So when Julia's baby is named William, it's not just a casual choice. It's a signal, and we're supposed to speculate about it. Episode 7 practically begged us to, dangling the reveal like bait. And the brilliance of it is that we still don't know where the writers are leading us. Every theory feels both possible and impossible at the same time.